Now that you have learned how to write basic select statements, let's take it a step further. In this video, you will dive into some powerful features of Transact SQL that lets you control how your data is displayed, filtered, and sorted. You will see how expressions, built-in functions, operators, columns, and values can help you do things like show just a year from a data time column, or calculate discounts based on order quantities. And in this video, I'll be using following functions, plus and concat, to basically stick two or more strings together, ISNULL and COALESCE to replace null values, cast and convert to cast or convert data types to another data types, mathematical operators, plus, minus, modulus, and so on, RTRIM and LTRIM to replace spaces from any kind of string, to remove spaces from any kind of string, lengths and data lengths to determine how many characters do I have in a string, or what space does it take to save this string, left and right functions to return specific number of characters of the left or right side of a string, using CHARINDEX to find the numeric starting position of search string inside another string, also using SUBSTRING to return portion of string starting at given position and for a specific number of characters. I'll be also explaining replace, basically to replace some kind of string by another string, and I will be explaining nesting functions, how to use multiple functions in one select statement. So let's get into it, and let's start from concatenating strings simply using plus signs. Go on and open your Management Studio and do the following scripting with me. Go on and click on New Query and simply write the following thing. Select, for example, let's use AB plus CD, right? And if you execute this one, you'll see this kind of output. So I concatenated two strings, the first one and the second one. Basically, you can do same things with different columns. Go on and use your AdventureWorks database. From here, choose tables, and let's choose this table again. Let's select, for example, let's see what kind of columns do we have here. We have, for example, first name, middle name, and last name. Let's select first name plus space between them, plus middle name, again plus, let's have space between them, and plus last name from my person table. Choose your database from here and run this command. And as you can see, I have full name here of the person. So to change this no column name here, you need to do following. Just simply write as, for example, full name, right? This is concatenating multiple columns by using plus sign. But as you can see, we have null values here. So does it mean that three of them were null, and that is why I got null here? So that's not a reason. For example, if you select from this table the actual data, you will see that, for example, I have Roberto, middle name is null, but I still have last name. So when I'm using plus sign, when this one of these three is a null, the output will be null. So to make sure that this doesn't happen, there is another function in SQL Server, in Transact SQL, that is called CONCAT. So how to use this CONCAT function? It is very easy to use. Again, just write select statement. Let's copy paste these columns here. Again, as full name, let's copy paste this one also. And instead of writing plus signs, here write commas. And at the front, just write concat. and use these brackets. So now if I run this command here, as you can see, I do not have null values because this concat will ignore this null value. And if I will have first name, it will use first name. If I will have null, for example, in the middle name, as we did have like in Roberto's example, he didn't have a middle name, it ignores this null value and straight it goes to the last name. And we will have, for example, full name. This function is very useful to use. So, since I mentioned null values, let's discuss following function. So, we have null values, right? What if I want to somehow replace this null value with something in my output? For that, in Transact SQL, we have two functions, ISNULL and COALESCE. These functions are available for replacing nulls, as I said, and this first function ISNULL requires two parameters. So let's use this first function ISNULL and try something. For example, as we previously saw, in middle name we had null values, right? Let's select these three columns. For example, let's select again these three columns. It is very good example. Also delete this plus sign from here also. And if I select here, I will have these null values. What if I want to replace this null value when I get an output? For example, instead of saying null, let's say, for example, my YouTube channel name. For that, I said that we can use function called ISNULL. It will take two parameters, actually the column, which I want to replace by something if there will be null value, and what it should be replaced by. For example, brain wheel, right? This is my YouTube channel name. So if I select this one again, as you can see, instead of null values, now I will have this brain wheel here. Also, as you can see, now I do not have column name, and let's use same name for my column. Let's use this middle name. This is first function, ISNULL. Second function is COALESCE. COALESCE works a bit differently. COALESCE will take any number of parameters and return the first known value. For example, let's discuss following example. Let's just select COALESCE, and in this COALESCE, let's type in following things: null, null, again null, and now let's type in some kind of string. For example, subscribe to my channel. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure to subscribe. Right? And again, let's type in null. So what will be the output? Basically, as we said, it takes any number of parameters and it will return first known value string. Let's select it. And as you can see, instead of it giving me null values at first, it gave me the actual string. So basically, you can use this COALESCE in any kind of select statement. Let's use this COALESCE instead of ISNULL. Again, here you can type here like this, for example this, and you can execute this one. As you can see, I have spaces now in the middle name, or you can just simply write like this. For example, let's use plus sign here again, and now I will have my actual middle names. So this is for these two functions, ISNULL and COALESCE. Basically, they are able to replace null values in your output, and they are very useful. Next one that I want to discuss in this video is how to concatenate other data types. For example, now we are concatenating only string values. So what if I want to concatenate, for example, int value, right? So will I be able to do it? For example, will I be able to like have this kind of information? For example, 1 plus this kind of one. So the output will be 2. So, but I wanted it to concatenate. So when I concatenate them, I want to see 11, right? To do that, we have again 2 functions, cast and convert. So let's see how they work. For example, cast takes my column name. Let's use, for example, here we have in our table, we have this business entity ID, which is int. So what if I want to include this business entity ID in my concatenation? For example, when I write this kind of thing, again, let's copy paste this one. In front of here, I want to add my business entity ID. Again, plus sign, again, space to make sure that we understand that there is something in between first name and business entity ID. Again, plus sign. And let's select it. So my SQL Server Management Studio says that conversion failed when converting numbers, converting the nvarchar value, right? So we need to convert this business entity ID somehow. So this is very easy. Just write cast here, and as what? As, for example, as varchar. And it will convert my business entity ID, and I will have this kind of output. Let's order my data. Order by, for example, business entity ID to make sure that we see actual rows. For example, we started from 1, right? 2. We missed these ones because we used plus signs instead of what? Instead of concat. So when one of them was null, it gave me the output of null. So you can use this concat function also. Let's copy paste this concat function. Let's copy paste this order. And here, let's add business entity ID. After adding this business entity ID, let's execute it. And I have incorrect syntax there. Oh, I'm missing the comma here. Let's execute it. And as you can see, I have an output without, for example, converting or casting this number. When I'm using concat, it necessarily do not need to, for example, I do not need to cast or convert my int values, but it is always good practice to change the data types when you are concatenating strings, right? It will be better to write something like this. So you can use 2 functions inside of them, inside to each other, and write like this. For example, I'm using concat now, and I'm using also cast. If I select it, I will have same output, but for SQL Server, it will know that it is concatenating only string values. Let's use second function called convert. Basically, it does the same thing. Let's copy paste this one, and instead of writing here cast, just write convert. But syntax is little bit different. For example, we need to write data type, and after data type we need to write column name like this, and select. Output basically will be same. You can use this convert in concat. This is called nested functions. Nested functions are when we are using one or more, not one or more, like more than one function in one select statement, right? I'm using 2 of them right now. And if I copy paste it here, basically the output will be same. So with concat and cast, I'm able to change data type of my column. So my business entity ID was int, but when I'm selecting it, I'm converting or casting it to another data type, for example, as varchar. In SQL Server, we have different kind of data types. I have a separate video about SQL Server data types. If you want to watch it, I will leave the link for that video in the description. So for now, let's continue. After talking about this, I want to talk about right now about mathematical operators in SQL Server. As you previously saw, I used this kind of statement, for example 1 plus 1, and the output was 2. So basically I can write whatever I want, use any kind of operator, for example 1 minus 1 or something like this, or basically I can also write %. As you may already know, %sign is for modulus. For example 10 %sign by, for example 3 will be 1, right? Because modulo will be 1. You can use any kind of signs here, plus, minus, %, division, subtraction, or even multiplication. It's up to you. This is very easy to use when you want to calculate some kind of numbers. The next function that I want to discuss is, for example, RTRIM and LTRIM. So basically what they do is, for example, if I select, for example, this kind of data, space, 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 A, I will have this A, but I will have these spaces in front. For example, if I copy paste it right now, as you can see, I have spaces, right? But for that, I have two different functions. For example, if I want to remove these spaces from the right hand side or from the left hand side, I can use these functions. RTRIM, use these brackets, and now if I select it, I should not have any spaces at the end. Since it is from the right hand side, I didn't have any spaces. Let's add spaces from right hand side. Let's select again, and if I copy paste this one again, as you can see, I do not have any spaces right now. So let's use LTRIM right now. Instead of R for the left, just write L. Let's select again, copy paste, and as you can see, I do not have any spaces in front. So how to remove both of like left hand side and the right hand side? So we can use nested function again, right? Just write this way, and also let's add here LTRIM and another bracket. So basically it will remove all the spaces at the front and at the back. Execute. Let's delete these ones, and as you can see, I will not have any kind of spaces here. So in our actual data, there can be a case where will be spaces used. So if you want to remove them, you can use these very useful functions. So next one I want to discuss is left and right. The left and right functions return specified number of characters on the left or right side of the string. Developers use these functions to parse, for example, some kind of strings. Let's do some example and you will see it more clearly. Let's use again our table, this table. Let's select, for example, just first name, it will be enough for this testing. And now let's use, for example, left function. If I write here left, for example, again brackets, syntax is very easy again, and how many characters do I want? For example, I want 3 characters, right? If I run this, I will have the first 3 characters of my first name outputted in my output window. Now use right. Again, copy paste this code, use right. Again, let's say from right I want to have 3 characters, and I will have like last 3 characters of my string. These functions are also very useful. As I said, for example, developers use these functions to parse some kind of strings. Next one is length and data length. So when we have some kind of columns, every column has number of characters in them. For example, let's again use my first name. It is a very good example and easy example to use from this table. And when I select this kind of information, I want to also see how many characters do I have. For example, here I will have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But I want SQL to count it for me. How should we do it? For example, you can use len brackets and length of what? My first name as len first name. And it will count for me. For example, this first name, as we said, was 4 characters, this is 9 characters, this is 3 characters, and so on. So next function that I want to discuss is, since I have 4 characters, how much space does it take? For example, is it like 4 bits? Is it 8 bits? How many bits does it take to store this kind of information? Let's see. For that, you need to use DATALENGTH, this function. Again, use the column that you want to count how many bits it is using. For example, as actual data length, and select. As we see, our first name has 4 characters but takes 8 bits. So why does it take 8 bits instead of taking 4 bits, right? For one character, let's take 1 bit. In data type video, where I explained different data types, I have mentioned that there is 2 types of strings, nvarchar and varchar. For our first name, as you can see, it is using nvarchar. It means that it will take 2 times the size of every kind of string, because it saves information in Unicode. So it can save information in Unicode. These 2 functions are very useful. First one gives me information, how many characters do I have, and second one gives me information, actual data length of my column. So let's continue with a new function. In Transact SQL, as we said, we have a lot of functions. So next one is, for example, CHARINDEX. To use CHARINDEX, this is to find the numeric starting position of searching string. For example, what if I want to find where t stands in this word? Let's do example and you will get the idea very easily. CHARINDEX, for example, CHARINDEX of first name, and in my first name I want to see where d stands, right? We need to find d in first name, and we want to select it from this table. So in the first word, let's also select the actual data to make sure that we will see this output is correct. For example, d stands at 4th place in this word. Again, d stands here, let's say, at the 2nd place, right? By using this CHARINDEX, you will be able to find any kind of string value in your strings, basically where it stands. It is also very good function for parsing some kind of information. Also, we have SUBSTRING. SUBSTRING is to return a portion of a string starting at given position and for a specific number of characters. For example, with SUBSTRING, let's use same select statement, but instead of CHARINDEX, let's write SUBSTRING, and SUBSTRING is used like this. For example, I want to have a first name, but I want to have characters from 2nd to 5th, right? Let's select it. So basically, starting from 2nd, we have Y and ED. So basically we are starting from second character on every row, right? By using substring. With CHARINDEX we are finding something, and with substring we are like cutting our strings by whatever size we want. Also we have like a very basic and very like easy to use functions. For example, reverse function. For example, you can write select reverse, and let's see how it sounds to write, for example, subscribe to my channel in reverse. And this is how it sounds. I cannot read out, obviously, but you can subscribe to my channel. We have upper and lower. For example, we can have here upper, so every character will be in uppercase now. We have lower. If I write something in uppercase, let's write something in uppercase. For example, let's write brain wheel. And let's write here lower. And I will have in lower cases. One of the like very useful also function is replace. As the word sounds, you can replace something by something. For example, let's replace in here. Let's select once again here. Replace. I want to replace something in my brain wheel. For example, replace LL. For example, or let's replace first one. Let's replace this B. For example, I want to replace B with what? Let's say A. And instead of brain wheel, I will have area wheel or something like that. The syntax is very simple. You will write whatever word you want to replace. For example, I want to replace brain wheel. In brain wheel, I want to replace B with A. Basically, you can obviously, all these functions you can use in any kind of select statement. Let's do, for example, this replace. Let's replace our first name. Let's use this first name. Again, replace my first name. For example, where I will have, for example, A, I want it to replace by, for example, brain. Again, let's try it this way. Let's select it. And as you can see, where it found an A, for example, here it found the second character A, and it replaced it by the brain wheel. So using this replace function is very easy and also very useful. Understanding these functions is really important. There are still more to explore, but that's it for this video. I will actually make a second video about these functions very soon, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment if you have any questions. See you in the next one.